Codes Cash Acceptance Regulations 2025 be disallowed. These regulations were a broken promise from the government. In the other place, the House of Representatives, Mr Bob Catter MP, Ms Di Lee MP and Mr Andrew G MP submitted a bill called the Keeping Cash Transactions in Australia Bill 2024. This bill highlighted the importance of cash to the regions and actually to the cities, and sought to ensure the continuation of banking services in rural and regional areas to support the use of cash. The Albanese government did not support that bill, except there was a communication between Mr G and the government which resulted in the production of a set of regulations which claimed to guarantee the continued use of cash. Yet, these regulations, failed to achieve the promised outcome. They undermined cash and helped destroy it. As I said hurriedly this afternoon, and can now say with more clarity...
Senator Grogan.
As I said hurriedly this afternoon, and can now say with more clarity, the promise of protecting the use of cash has been broken. It was a deceitful lie. The Competition and Consumer Industry Codes Cash Acceptance Regulations...
Senator Roberts, resume your seat. Senator Grogan.
Chair, I believe that Senator Roberts is deeply misleading and throwing around some pretty heavy language. I would seek to ask you to get him to withdraw.
I will take some advice. My opinion is that this is a debating point and you have an opportunity to participate in the debate. I will seek some advice. I will stand by my first thoughts. Senator Roberts, you have the call. I will caution you to consider your language.
Thank you, Deputy President. I'll prove my point as I continue. The Competition and Consumer Industry Codes Cash Acceptance Regulations 2025 are promoted as mandating cash, yet in a display of rank dishonesty. These regulations allow almost every business in the country to not accept cash. That's why I say it's deceit. Firstly, small businesses with a turnover under $10 million are exempted, which is 97% of businesses in Australia. Then every other business is excluded from the regulations, except fuel stations and supermarkets. Then this mandate is shrunk even further through limiting the cash that fuel stations and supermarkets can take to only $500 a time, and reduced further, again with the provision that only requires cash be accepted between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. I'll say that again, that cash be accepted only between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. I'll say it again, that cash be accepted between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. So no cash anywhere between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. None, anywhere. But wait, there's more. Further exemptions can be given to a business where accepting cash is not feasible. In Senate estimates, the ACCC gave the example of a country town with no bank to give and receive cash. In that town, the cash mandate would not apply to their supermarket or petrol station, if they have one. So these regulations, which are promoted as protecting cash, have the effect of limiting cash acceptance to perhaps 1% of businesses, and only during certain times of the day. Outside those hours, no cash. What a scandal. There is an agenda here which I will now go into. We've seen many inquiries into bank closures in rural and regional Australia. The Big Four banks have thumbed their noses at these inquiries, and continued to close branches even as the Senate inquired into bank closures. Fact. A cash mandate, I was on that inquiry, a cash mandate would ruin their plans to shut down all of their presence in the bush, dumping the provision of limited banking services on Australia Post via Bank at Post. This provides a real problem for licensed post offices in the bush because they are not set up to handle large amounts of cash. They simply can't get it into town or out of town. The money they make from the transaction, coming from the banks, is insufficient to cover their costs in many cases. The banks will save a fortune through the closure of their branches and dumping the cost on Australia Post and ultimately on the taxpayers. Always with Labor The taxpayers pick up the bill. We, the people, pay. Labor voters will have to ask themselves why the Labor Party is so quick to provide the Big Four banks with additional profit, as if $30 billion a year between them already isn't enough. Could it be the millions the Australian Labor Party put in their pockets in gifts known as donations every election cycle from the banks? I read the list out earlier today. It's right there as public record. Even The Guardian reported on it. And I can remember the ANZ Bank had the smallest donation with almost $100,000 for the previous election, not the 25 election, the 2022, to nearly $200,000 for Westpac and Commonwealth, 138 for NAB. Recently, in the last election, the banks gave $1.3 million to Labor and Liberal and Nationals. One Nation has taken nothing, zero from the banks. So our policies put everyday Australians first, not big business first, not big banks first, as the Labor Party does. The Liberal Party tried this on a few years back and were defeated. The Liberal Party was defeated when One Nation combined with the Greens and the Labor Party branches, your own branches, to vote down a bill which was nowhere nearly as bad as these regulations are. This occurred because the Labor Party's ethnic branches in particular got wind of their support and forced the Labor Party to oppose the bill. The decision to sneak, yes, sneak, an effective cash ban through in regulation was an attempt to hide what the government is doing from their ethnic branches. You want to hide it from your own people. Bad luck. One Nation saw you and you've been caught. This morning I had representation from the National Seniors Australia, whose members are distraught at the prospect of losing the ability to pay in cash, in my office here in Canberra. Many of their members do not operate electronic banking, cannot pay for computers and internet, or live in areas where the service is so poor that cash is still the most common method of payment. Fact. The government's failure to make the NBN work in rural and regional areas and their decision to shut down the 3G network is an argument for another day. I could pile into that here, but I won't tonight. The Canberra bubble, who reside here in their ivory towers and author regulations like this, have no idea how an economy works in the bush, nor in the cities. They refuse to accept many Australians are not engaged in digital transactions. Many protect their right to use cash, their constitutional right to use cash. The Canberra bubble's fingerprints are all over this execrable, dishonest document. National Seniors Australia pointed out a glaring hole in these regulations. Pharmacies. If you're an Australian who does not have an active credit or debit card and you need medication, as many seniors do, what will the outcome be? Come back when you can pay with the card? People could die because of these regulations. Now, I accept that chemists may choose to keep accepting cash for now. But what happens when the local ATMs go, as they are, all over Australia, in the bush, in the suburbs and in the metropolitan areas? When people can no longer get their hands on cash to pay for pharmaceuticals? What happens when a rural business closes their local branch? Then the one in the next town, then the next, and petrol is $3 a litre. $3 a litre. Thanks, Labor, for that, by the way. So supermarkets, not in this town, have to drive hundreds of kilometres to the next town to get food and come back. It's a matter of life and death. This regulation allows businesses that are suffering profit decline to look at the cost of maintaining cash and go, look, I want to support with cash, but I can't afford to. Instead of having to front their customers and explain why they no longer accept cash, they can simply blame the government and the policies of the banking industry. And the banks, what's in it for them? Control. Control over cash, control over fees, because whenever you use an electronic method, there's a fee involved. This is the outcome these regulations are framed to create. This is a war on cash. It's a war on Australian lifestyles and freedoms. Banks want everyone to pay with a card and pay the banks for the privilege with a transaction fee. And Labor is helping banks to greatly increase income from fees, helping the banks who already make $30 billion in profit to increase their profits. Once consumers have no choice except to pay that fee, the fees will go up and up and up and up because you won't have a choice. These regulations will provide one of the world's worst environments for cash payments, if not the worst. And I remind people that Liberal and Labor supported the bank bail-ins in 2017-2018. These banks can never lose because you've enabled that to happen. You private enterprise the profit, you privatise the profits to the banks and you socialise the losses. This banking industry has got so little risk. It's being done without the debate this sort of a move should have. At least the Liberals had the guts to put their cash ban in a bill, put it on the notice paper in plain sight and have a fair debate, even though you supported them in the lower house. The Albanese government has, instead of being open, tried to sneak it through, lie about it, be deceitful. Yet you still have the hide to talk about transparency. What a joke, and what a cruel joke. Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark and the Netherlands have realised their cash bans were a mistake and they have wound them back. These countries have introduced regulations to actually encourage the use of cash and the provision of cash through their banking system. Labor's regulations are already behind international best practice. They are a mistake. They are a deceit. They will cause untold suffering, and I ask the Senate to disallow them. Thank you.
Senator Whittaker.